So if you want to be in a band and you want to be a rock star, then the person you need to know is the A&R manager, artist and repertoire manager. They're the people, they're kind of like the talent scouts for the record industry. They're the people that want to come and find you. They never found me. Today, we've got the opportunity to meet an A&R manager who's made a career beyond being an A&R manager, be a band manager, to be a promoter, a journalist. And we're going to reflect on his career today and go through that journey. We're also going to have the rare opportunity to get advice for all of us indie over 50 artists who's, dealing with the whole challenge of how do you get your music heard and what's a good song these days. One of the things I love about our guest today is he's still looking for the next great song. He could be stuck in 1989 when he kicked off, or 2005 when he took his bands to the top of the charts. He's still looking for the next thing. And that's really, really exciting. And in fact, I'll have a link to one of his playlists there that we can check out some hot new music happening right now. So on this basis, it's my real pleasure to introduce today's guest, Chris Long.
Hi, John. How are you? Nice to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to speak to you, Chris. Thank you so much for your time. I always start with, where are you in the world today?
I'm in Los Angeles, and it was 95 degrees today, so kind of took it easy. It's a holiday weekend here in America, and tomorrow I'll get to sleep late on a Monday for a rare occasion to do that.
One of the things I always ask, I talked a little bit in our introduction about the fact that you're not stuck in 1989, but many of us are as indie over 50 artists. We're rooted in that early music in our career and in our youth. So I want to ask you, what's your favorite artist of the 21st century?
Ooh, the 21st century. I like so much stuff genre-wise that to pick one artist would be really, really difficult. Commercially viable artist, the Black Keys would come to mind. An independent artist would be a Swedish lady named Anna von Hauswolf. She's the world's preeminent church organist who's got a really awesome hard rock band, and she's got a couple of new songs out. Found out about her from Iggy Pop's radio show, and have been a huge fan ever since. I spend 20 hours a week listening to new music, whether it's things on labels, things on radio shows, or unsigned artists I meet on Reddit or Facebook groups. I look everywhere, very much trying to still find the next big thing.
Love it, Chris. And look, with those artists that you've introduced to us here, we'll make sure we have their links below. Another question I've got for you is, what was your first purchase with your own money in music?
When I was a kid, I bought the Pac-Man Fever 45. That was my first purchase as a kid. My father, I grew up in Virginia. My mother was a pop and Motown fan. My father was a classic country fan. I sort of drifted into hard rock in the early 80s in junior high, because that's what you did to annoy your parents. And when I first moved to Los Angeles, I didn't know there was a music scene that wasn't the Sunset Strip. And my friends stopped seeing me on weekends, and they're like, why don't you come out anymore? I said, I do. I just go where there's better music. And so I am always aware of what's going on commercially, but my own tastes lean a little more left of center, lean a little more indie.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about your journey into your career. How did this all start for you, that you ended up as an A&R manager?
Well, I didn't like where I lived. And I met a couple at college who moved to Los Angeles. And I called him one day, and he said, my wife works at a temp agency, so if you get here on Thursday, you can go to work Monday. So you don't need to worry about having a job. And 6 weeks after I turned 19, I loaded up the car and moved to Beverly, as the Beverly Hillbillies theme says. And 6 weeks later, he dared me to write a review, or kind of prodded me to write a review of his band and submit it to a magazine. And like most things in my life, I jump in head first and go 100 miles an hour towards it. And after about the beginning of the next year, I had made $25 writing. And I said, the guys that make all the money are the ones that promote the concerts. So I know all the bands and I know the club owners. They don't know that I have a fake ID. So they don't really care. It's all a cash business. So I started promoting concerts. And the first band that I promoted that was noteworthy, big in Australia as well as the United States, that was Caius. And they became Queens of the Stone Age. And I saw them sitting on a curb one night outside of a club and said, why are you sitting outside? And they won't let us in because we're too young. Fuck you. And I said, oh boy, okay, I'm going to go in and write a really wonderful review of you guys. And they didn't know who I was. And I went in and it was just the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. And I started promoting them and they got signed by the record label that first hired me to do A&R when I was 21.
What a great introduction. You're 21 and you've spotted talent already.
Yeah. And I was teased by the other promoters for not booking bands that were shitty that had big draws. And I said, I'd like to enjoy the music at the nights I have to sit at the club all night. So I always kind of gravitated towards the best stuff. And I just, the label said, just keep promoting your concerts, keep writing for magazines. Here's a salary, here's an office, just tell us first. And it worked out pretty good for about 3 years. And then, Billionaire's going to do what Billionaire's going to do. He got sick of the label and got into an argument with $100 million heir at Elektra. And we just all got laid off the day before Thanksgiving with 2 weeks pay. We had bands on the charts and everything. So it was kind of, but yeah, that welcome to the music business.
Welcome to the music business, but at this stage, you've already spotted talent. You started working for a record company did you say a label manager or an A&R? What was your role?
I was A&R man, A&R, not scout, one step above that. The A&R scout, somebody that does it for CDs. But I was an A&R rep, and I traveled around and went and saw different bands in different cities and went to all the music conventions that are no longer around, CMJ and NMS. And I was at the first couple of South by Southwest when it was still a manageable convention that wasn't just about profit. It was more about art. So, lots of that stuff, lots of flying around and seeing bands before you could broadcast on the internet.
And what was the next step after the Billionaire intervened and you're all laid off? Tough timing just before Christmas as well. What was the plan from there?
The plan was to find a band to manage, but I knew what it took to get a record deal. And there's not a lot of bands that good hanging around. It's, and it took about 7 years for me to find a band that I said, I want to manage this band. And in the meantime, I did other stuff. I started doing A&R consulting for other people. I had a part-time marketing job at the LA Times where I would go to big corporate events and kind of had a shirt and tie on and not quite so much hair and talk to people and pretty interesting job. I learned a lot about marketing a product in those years, but it was a business to consumer type marketing situation. I wasn't selling ads. I was more dealing with customers and big wigs at sporting events and, auto shows and things like that. So it was interesting and it taught me a lot about the business world. But I found a band and I said, this is it. And I dove into that full bore and that ended up working out pretty good.
So how did you know? We'll get into who the band is and what the success was. How did you know after seeing in 7 years, you've been out scouting, looking, following bands, going to gigs? What was it about this band that said, I'm all in?
Quality of the songwriting and the timing of what they were doing versus what's going on at that particular time commercially. And it was a really nice, everything worked out perfect. The timing, the quality of the writing, the people involved in the band, the two primary individuals involved in the band are really stand-up guys. And when you take folks around to a record label and they say thank you and yes sir and no ma'am and please and hold doors for people, and I had a couple people say, look man, cut it out, tell them to stop being wise asses. And I'm like, no, they're just polite. They're just polite. They're polite. Not all musicians are crabby assholes. And that is the reputation that a lot of crabby assholes have given all musicians. The kind of baggage that all of us have to carry. You work with bands, and then people think the worst. So you're on heroin or whatever the joke may be at the time. So yeah, everything worked out perfect, and it took a couple of years of real A&R and artist development to get them to the point where they were signed. But once they got signed, things went really, really good for the first 3 years.
Tell me about this band. Who are they?
They're called Crossfade, and the record came out on April 29th, 2004. They were a nu metal band on the lighter side of nu metal, not as heavy as Limp Bizkit or a lot of the other bands that did that stuff. And the radio department, we were signed by the head of Columbia Records, Donnie Einer. And everyone at Columbia wanted to keep the man happy. And they worked their ass off because Don told them to. And they loved us. We were really nice. We were polite. We didn't not show up to events they scheduled for us. We didn't make them look bad. We showed up to radio stations at 6 a.m. and played and did acoustic versions, and then went back and sacked out on the bus. And I didn't spend that much time on the road. I was busy managing it. But we did what we were supposed to. And the song came out April 29th, 2024, and it stayed in the top 20 for 65 weeks. And was the most played song of the United States in 2005 on 2 different radio formats, on the active rock, which is heavy metal, and on the alternative rock radio format. It took a long time. It took about 9 years for someone to beat that 65 weeks, and it was AWOL Nation. And AWOL Nation had 2 members of the radio promo team that worked on Crossfade, working with them. So it went really, really good. We went to Vancouver to record our second record. We came back. Don had been fired, and 80% of the people that worked on the record had left. And there was, I believe, an Australian, Rob Stringer, who insisted that I think he was Sir Rob Stringer, I think was his name. And he had another rock band, and he didn't want us to get attention. He wanted to make his own rock band. And the guys just put their guitars down, and we walked away from Columbia Records. The plan was to write some more songs and get another record deal. But at that point, I think they were home 31 days and 23 months. So they stayed on the road pretty much for 2 years. And they just, the principal in the band this was a pay cut for him. He has some very marketable skills, and he just said, that's enough. The music business, I don't want to deal with it anymore. And that was a lot of fun. It took, like I said, about 2 years to get them developed, 3 years on Columbia before we kind of walked away, 3.5. And a lot of people can say they managed a band. A lot of people can say they managed a band and got a record deal, but not many people can say they managed a band that was the most played song in the country for a calendar year on 2 radio formats. And that's what I was looking for. And I found it.
Wow. Well, that's just amazing. So did you say 65 weeks from debut as one song specifically was in that those top charts?
The band's debut single entered the top 20 after X amount of weeks, I can't remember, and stayed in the top 20 at hard metal for 65 weeks and at alternative rock for 48 weeks.
Wow.
It was unprecedented. 3 number 1 singles at active rock and 3 top 10 singles at alternative rock. And I wanted to release another single, and they're like, no. I'm like, why not? Linkin Park had 7 singles. Let's do it. They're like, you go make another record. And no one knew that, somebody was going to come in and just knock all the employees out. Once Don left, all the people that were his people didn't want to work for another person. So they left. And, we generated $9.7 million of retail. We had a gold ringtone, and we were paid $15,445 in royalties. And I looked at them and laughed and said, that's really funny. Where's the real check? And they said, oh, you made all your money on touring. You made all your money on publishing. You made all your money on merchandise. And I said, but we want the money we made from the record too. And we did a forensic accounting on Columbia Records, and that's a big no-no. So our guy left. We had done a forensic accounting, called them on their bullshit. Then we had no friends left.
Did it change the result? I mean, when you did that accounting exercise, did you find that they'd claimed expenses or advances which weren't appropriate?
Most of the expenses were independent radio promotion, and there are cartel members that are less morally bankrupt than a lot of independent radio promotion people. I'll just leave it at that.
So that's where the money went.
All the bills they said that they had, they actually got the people to send in the extra invoices. So yeah, it was a $48,000 accounting, and it worked out to the penny was more than a little suspect. But what can we do?
And then as you say, you've got band members with different talents and careers that they were pursuing. They went off in a different direction. It's not even that they went to a different record company. They just disbanded. Is that correct?
The leader of the band didn't pick up a guitar and write a song for several years after that. 3 #1 singles to not writing a song for several years. And they just did some 20th year anniversary tour, not tour, but dates this summer. They're called heavy metal Coachellas, we call them here, where all the hard rock bands play in the big festivals. And they did like 4 or 5 of those. And this, and I don't know if they'll do any more or not. I kind of helped pass on the word to reach out and get in touch with the people that did that. They own a record label and they think the band's going to write a new record, but I don't think there'll ever be any new Crossfade music. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see.
And what was peak popularity like for you with that success on the charts, the touring that was associated with it? Sounds like Nice Guys. So we're not talking about televisions being thrown out the windows. No. What was peak stardom like for you in your experience there?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of money, and it was a lot of responsibility. At 23, like I said, 23 months, we were home 29, 30 days. And then we went and did a 3-week military tour and flew all around the Mediterranean and the Horn of Africa and into the Middle East. We spent the night on a battleship on patrol in the Persian Gulf in 2006 when there was actually a chance someone might have shot at it. So we went and did the military tour and just got another record together. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize about bands is your first record, and this is why there's so many one-hit wonders, those are songs you've worked on your whole life. And then when you're told by an A&R person or a manager who's hearing it from an A&R person, hurry up, write songs, they don't. That's why there's a lot of one-hit wonders. Now, we worked with Steve Lillywhite on the second record, who, U2, and, you can look up Steve Lillywhite's record, and he was great. And I was the first guy that ever bought Steve Lillywhite barbecue. So that's a big thing. We went down, the band is from the South, and he what is this? And it was really funny buying a sophisticated, he's also, I believe, knighted individual. I don't know the correct terminology. Right. But yeah, he's got an Order of the British Empire or something, OBE. And he really didn't know what to expect. And then he tasted the damn barbecue and wanted to get some to take back on the plane with him. So, yeah. But Steve's job was to bust our chops to get a record done because they wanted to get it out. And, it was a good record, but with all the other stuff going on at the label with no one promoting it, the guys just said, "I don't have time for this crap." He went back and started doing what he loved before, which is writing code. That's the main thing that he still does.
So for you, Chris, you've gone through this process. What have we done? We've been a journalist, we've been a promoter, we've been the A&R manager for the labels, you've been a band manager for a record-breaking, top-charting band. What's next?
Found another couple of bands that I managed. I had a partner who was a lawyer. And the year he passed away, they mentioned him in the Grammys. He was very well known in the music business. And I always wonder what if he didn't get sick. I was at an event recently and saw Herbie Hancock and went over and said hello and said, "Yeah, I'm that guy that Alan used to work with on the rock bands when he managed you." And he turned around and had a conversation with me for 20 minutes when everybody else was all giving me the stink eye. And so it was, I would like to think some better stuff might have happened, but I've had a lot of fun. I've come close with a couple of other bands, not to having #1 singles and most played song of the year, but getting on just missed a tour, just missed a label deal. Somebody got sick and couldn't sing right during a showcase, which screwed things up. Of course. So, it's really, you got to find the right band. It's got to be the right time. It's got to be the right people involved, and everything has to go well. It's like I tell musicians, there's 1,000 steps from where you start to where you need to be. And if you step off the path once, it can fuck up the other 999 steps that are all in order. And it's not easy, man. It's really, especially now, it's gotten tremendously difficult with all the changes now.
Chris, you said something really interesting there. You said about all the changes in front of us. And there has been so many changes, right? There's internet, there's streaming, there's technology, there's AI. Tell me, what have you seen are those big changes in front of the music industry more recently?
The ability for the average person with a little more technical savvy than I have to record high quality recordings, not necessarily great writing, has enabled the floodgates of songs to just open and drown us all. And there are 1 million songs a week that get added to online streaming, whether it's Bollywood wannabes or African rappers or ranchero groups in rural Mexico, or anybody that does anything in America or Australia. There's 1 million songs a week that come out. And it's just, how do you fight through all that stuff? I was recently up for a job, and they hired someone whose A&R experience was in algorithmic recognition. And I said, you can train a monkey to read an algorithm, but you can't train a monkey to have soul or heart. And you hired somebody because you're getting a favor from his dad, who doesn't have any experience other than looking at what the algorithm says to look at. And once the algorithm tells him to look at it, he's not going to be able to tell you if it's any good or not. And they kind of went, well, we'll decide if it's good. And admitted pretty much that, he would work cheaper and he would scan the algorithms that came in. Labels have access to all sorts of stuff through Spotify because they own Spotify. And Spotify has those algorithms that on the radio, for instance, when it goes to the radio based on the song that, so it's, that's really a problem when it comes to finding an artist that has a chance to have a career. And that's why there are so many over 50 artists that are still indie, is because, it's very difficult to get an algorithm to recognize you and have the money to market yourself after you spend the money to record stuff, after you spend the money to do the artwork, after you do all of that stuff. And it's just, it's really a lot of the people nowadays that get discovered are rich kids. And we can go back to Lana Del Rey. Her father paid Lorne Michaels $3 million for her to be the only person ever to sing on Saturday Night Live who didn't have a record out. He was a domain troll. You know what those are, right? They buy domain names and then sell them off for an enormous profit. That's where he got his money. This kid who is really good, his name's Somber. I think he's the #1 record in the country right now, SOMBR. He's from a well-to-do family and went to a performing arts high school in New York that you have to audition to get into, but that also costs a hell of a lot of money. They're not just pulling anyone in that's got talent. They're pulling in rich kids that have talent. The Chainsmokers told Howard Stern in an interview, well, what it takes to get discovered is to go to college for 4 years and not have to worry about paying for it, and then move to New York City, and we both got a job interning at Atlantic Records for 2 years, not making any money, living in the most expensive city in the continent. And somebody heard one of our demos at an A&R meeting and asked to hear the rest of our stuff, and they signed us. And that's really, unfortunately, but not the Chainsmokers, but Lana Del Rey and Somber are really good. I don't much like the Chainsmokers. Maybe somebody would object to me saying I think they suck, but music is like that. But that's really where a lot of the talent is coming from. And it's unfortunate. And then there are a lot of people that try to buy their kids in. And that's really difficult to deal with too, because then there's these people that aren't very good that have these huge marketing budgets, and you see them wherever you go and you're like, well, it can be very very defeating for the average musician to think this person is earning this attention when it's really their dad paying for it or their mom paying for it. So it's really unfortunate. It's just the way it is. It really is just the way it is. And I know a lot of people that, not personally necessarily, but I know a lot of artists that get discovered that do it the right way. Billie Eilish is one. She got discovered based on how talented she and her brother are. And I will fight anyone that says they're not talented. Not fist fight, but, argue with them, because they're incredibly talented. You don't win 2 Oscars before you're 25 for best song of the year in a movie unless you're doing something right. So and a lot of people use that as an excuse. Well, everybody's buying their way in the record business. It's all corrupt. I'm not going to fuck it. And I don't like seeing that either, because it makes a lot of people that have something good artistically to say give up on creating their art because they feel as though, why even bother trying? I had a guy that I was working with, really good, did some songs, made some videos, did some marketing, started getting good results, owns over 50 restaurants, and just decided after the Grammys, when he went to the Grammys, I don't care anymore. I don't know. Start playing golf. Buy some property in the country where I'm from, my family's from, but buy a bunch of houses, do real estate over there. I'm not going to spend any more money on music. And it was just a shame because he's really good. And,
was he at the Grammys because he was nominated, or?
No, he was at the Grammys as he joined the Recording Academy.
Yeah.
And he did everything he needed to do to be accepted into the Recording Academy, which was real big for him. And then he went to the Grammys, and it was all like, the Grammys made him stop caring. Really did. I went one year and fell asleep.
I love the story about Billie Eilish. I think it's really inspiring for us because it's literally, and I've heard the story, the song went up on SoundCloud, free platform, people heard it. And I guess that's what the Spotify algorithm is trying to do. It's to identify a song that then is going to resonate, and then other people are going to pick it up. So I have some belief that on the basis of the fact that people listen, like, share, re-listen, that must be an indicator to Spotify, and therefore a good song can rise.
Yes, and there are good songs that get the bumps. I've had friends who all of a sudden go from 1,000 listeners a month, and they wake up one day and they've got 9,000, and they're like, oh my God, they go on their Spotify artist and they find out that the radio kicked in and it started sending them to other people. And maybe of those 8,000 people, only 80 of them intentionally played the song, but the other 7,920 heard it. That Spotify is not evil. I never heard anyone say, take my song off your radio station or take my record out of your store. And all these people that are saying, take my song off your platform are just, it's a way that enables them to continue to bitch and fuss and feel victimized when what they really need to do is they need to promote.
Firstly, Chris, one of the things I've really appreciated about meeting you and seeing how you've engaged with songwriters, and you give very generous feedback, but you also give very direct feedback. And I heard a couple of messages there. A, don't shoot the messenger with Spotify. Maybe I've distilled that down a little bit. And B, you need to promote. Both of those were really important messages. So the promotion one has been a journey I've been on. And in fact, one of my Indie Over 50 videos was prompted by our discussion earlier. And when I had to realize that promotion was a key part. So can you just share your insights when, especially in the context of Indie Over 50 artists who are maybe not doing this to become a rock star, but on the other hand, they'd like their music to be heard, and the role of promotion with their art?
Well, that's one of the things I do with working with individuals, artists like you, is I teach how to do it. And a lot of people want to just have a big, giant number of streams. And there are ways to do that. It might not be the best for your algorithm when it comes to Spotify radio, It might not be the best way to actually get followers. It might just be people that heard the song. But it all depends on what the artist really wants to do. But with Spotify and with everything, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, you have to spend time spreading the word that you're on these platforms. People with Spotify think it's their job to promote your song when they're just a distribution portal. That's what they do. And it just bugs me to hear people scream and yell and holler when I know that the reason why they're not doing very good is either they're not very good or they're not trying very hard or both. And just because their song isn't the greatest song doesn't mean they're not worthy of respect. Their artistic opinion is invalid, but it's just sometimes you just want to tell them, dude, shut up. I mean, you spent $16 on matchbooks that you handed out at concerts in one room. There are 4 billion people on the internet. Spotify has 700 million monthly subscribers. You didn't spend a penny promoting to any of them. And, if I put out a new car, it might be the fanciest, fastest, sexiest new car that ever hit the market. But who's going to buy it if they don't know it's for sale? That's unfortunate. It really is. And there are people I know that have engaged certain companies that concentrate on streams. And once the program ends, they go from 35,000 listeners a month down to 3,500 or 800. And it's very defeating and it's very deflating, even though they have this spin number. So I teach people there's different ways to go about marketing towards people that are really going to like you and come back, not just the turn and burn people that listen to playlists at work. And working with independent artists, the first thing I do is I try to figure out, do you want to release the song and get yourself attention? Do you want to put the song in film and TV? Or do you want a more recognized artist to record the song? And those three, the answer to that question determines the advice that I give them. And when it comes to sync, a lot of people are, I'm going to sync my song. There's 8 million songs in the sync pipeline. And thanks to the Writers Guild of America and their very unequitable settlement with the streaming platforms that has cost other unions jobs and money, the number of shows that get created are half. The Writers Guild settled during the end of the pandemic and said, yeah, we got a fair deal. Yeah, row, union, great. Unions are awesome. But the streaming companies let them celebrate for 72 hours. And about 72 hours and 3 minutes later, they came out and said, well, we just had to negotiate with the writers. We've got to negotiate with the actors. We've got to negotiate with the Teamsters. And we have to negotiate with IATSE, which is all the people that work on sets. And we can't afford to make 650 scripted shows. So we're going to make 300 scripted shows. And instead of 25 episodes of Law and Order, there's 12. I just watched something on Netflix last night. There's only 5 episodes in the whole season. It used to be 12 to 15, 16. So the number of outlets to sync your music is tremendously been cut into. And a lot of the stuff, go look at your Netflix homepage. Stuff's made all over the world. It's not like things are only made in America and Australia. Stuff from Korea, Turkey, all over the place. There's even Nigerian Nollywood films are getting on Netflix now. And they don't sync stuff that they're not going to run across your one-stop sync page and license a song from. And it's really, really difficult. And I'm not saying don't try. It's just everything is getting more competitive in the music business, and it's all due to the technology making things easier to accept, to create and easier to get stuff out. And everybody thinks, okay, now I'm a composer. No, you wrote a composition, but you're not a composer. It's a different thing. So it's very difficult dealing with artists that are frustrated by this. And to try to be the person to tell them, I am often blamed for not putting my arm around them and telling them, the world is screwed up, man. It's just so wrong. I'm like, no, well, you can still compete, but you have to try harder. You can't just put out a single and expect the world to line up and kiss your butt. Maybe the 60 people at work will think you're a rock star, but how many times are those 60 people going to stream your song? Enough to get noticed? No. So working, like I said, it depends on the artist's goals. Songwriters, I'm trying to write songs for other artists. Why do you write songs that sound like Bruce Springsteen? He writes his own. He doesn't need your songs. I want Bruce Springsteen. I want, some big famous songwriting legend to do this song. With Crossfade, we had a song on a soundtrack or a compilation that sold 3 million copies. At the time, the rate was 17 cents a song per record sold for publishing. 17 cents times 3 million is $510,000. 75% to the band, 25% to Sony ATV, which is Sony Music now. And we made about $390,000 off that compilation. And the writer made about that much money off of every song on the debut album. So why is a manager going to give away a song on an album because you want the artist to cover your song when the artist writes their own songs? So you have to explain to people like, okay, what's your angle? And then, no, well, that's not so realistic. But maybe you could do this and maybe you could do that. But it's everybody has a different journey and everybody wants something different. Some folks just want to put a song out. And I'll mention it before you do, this AI. Oh my God. I forget, what is it? Not Sonos, but the
Pseudo.
Yeah, that AI.
Pseudo.
Yeah. It's horrible. And when I hear people now that use AI, I'll make comments like, wow, I hear this vocalist everywhere. How did you possibly get this busy vocalist to cut this song? And just to let them know, like, you're not fooling anyone without saying, what are you, a dumbass? This is AI. No one's going to play this. No one's going to invest in it. And everyone thinks that AI is going to ruin the music business. It's ruining a lot of other elements of society, but artistic merit and art. No one is ever going to be excited to give a Grammy to a guy, a computer engineer that created an AI program that wrote a song. It's just not going to happen. But it does pollute the market. There are a lot of people out there. The rapper Timberland, I don't know if you know who he is, the producer. He had a big contest where you could submit your song to Timberland to win 5 days in the studio with him. And he used all those songs to train an AI. He gave the winner the 5 days in the studio, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And now he's got this company with all these fake AI artists that have pictures and identities and stuff. And it's horrible. It's really horrible. But if you write a great song that you can go out and perform at a high level, no computer can stop that. No computer can stop that. But again, it's just that much more competition. It's that much more static in the airwaves to just get your way. So it's really difficult, but it's not impossible if you're a great writer.
One of the contentious areas for me on AI is the fact that in YouTube, you need to declare that there's AI content, whereas on Spotify, you don't need to declare. Well, it's certainly not part of the requirements, and Velvet Sundown and celebrated out there with 1 million listeners a month or whatever. And I think they're now declaring that they're an AI band, but the gig's up. But as you say, so many songs are submitted, even to the Indie Over 50 playlist, where it may have been, the words may have been written by the artist and maybe even the melody, but you can hear that same country singer and you hear that same production value, and it's not declared on their Spotify profile. It does not say AI.
Yeah, it's, if that's what people want to do, I mean, it's like playing golf and kicking the ball down the fairway with your foot. You're never going to know if you're a good golfer if you cheat. You're never going to know if you're a good songwriter if you cheat. And the really good songwriters don't need to cheat. So that's what I tell people too. And a lot of them understand and respect that I'm saying that, but they also want me to sympathize and tell them screwed up the world is that they have to compete with that stuff. And it's just a fact. I mean, you know, you really have to compete with it. Exxon never thought there'd be electric cars. So now they sell a lot less gas. Don't feel bad for Exxon. They're still making a lot of money. And, you know, that might not be the most apt analogy, but, you know, it's you know, technology brings things into every industry that we never could imagine having to deal with. And I have very good ears and I can spot the AI stuff. And sometimes I might miss it. But at the end of the day, when you do the research that I do, let's look at their social media profile. Let's see what's going on. Oh, it's a computer. Okay, it has, you know, there's nothing but fake computer generated images on the Instagram page. Not even pictures of stop signs or pictures of traffic or pictures of a squirrel. It's all fake. Everything about it is fake. And it really, next. You know, and the major labels aren't signing a lot of the artists that are upset about AI. The whole thing about the major labels is the only artists that they sign now are these TikTok kids. And Sony has 15 labels that are part of the Sony family, RCA, Epic, Columbia. And each one of those companies is run by a different group of people. And they all sign these indie artists, and they'll put out a song at a time that gets written by the artists that are signed to that company's publishing company, that gets written by those writers. And if they can get a hit, then they're going to push that artist up to the major label. And the purpose of the major label is to get them on commercial radio. That's really all major labels are good for now. So if you're not going to be on top 40 radio, or you don't need to be on, you know, mainstream country radio, you really don't need a major label. You need an independent label, or you just need to do your own marketing. Yes, it's been a long time. A few years ago during the pandemic, a guy from my hometown in the middle of nowhere in Virginia, Oliver Anthony, had a political song that went huge and got all over the radio.
Remember that?
He didn't sign a major label deal. He didn't sign a publishing deal. Turned down a lot of money. I don't know why, but he hated the whole system. He didn't want to be a part of it. And the last one before that was Macklemore and Lewis that did it. So in order to have a big radio hit, you do need to play the major label game, because the same companies that own the major labels own the radio stations. And they're not going to put somebody on the radio that's competing with the product that they're making in the other wing of the same company.
And likewise, the investment in Spotify, the natural channel for product through Spotify as well. So let's talk, you've talked about the increase in competition. It's because the low cost of barriers now, you can do it yourself at home to a good quality. There is AI and the preponderance that's delivering volume as well. So it's a very noisy, crowded marketplace. And we talked about the celebrated opportunities, you know, the Billie Eilish, you know, was found and discovered, and that pure talent did rise and make its way to the top. What advice would you have for indie over 50 artists? We've talked about one key part of advice is about needing to promote. Any other advice as well, Chris?
Enjoy yourself and not get so worried about the business aspect of it that you let it affect the creative aspect of it. And if you can be strong creatively, the business opportunities will come. Now, I have to say, if you're trying to be Tate McRae, the new Britney Spears, big parts, tiny clothes, lots of shaking in the video, you can't really be over 50. You have to be late teens to mid 20s. But if you realistically are creating an art, music as art, the business opportunities can come. But again, if you're so busy worrying about the system is stacked against me, AI, Daniel Elk invested in a defense contracting company, blah, 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 you're never going to write anything any good, because you're going to be too stressed out, too upset to focus on your art. And that's the thing that I go to a lot of these things. They're called pop hangs, where kids walk up with their cell phone to an event with a public address system and say, my name is so-and-so. My Instagram is, I'm looking for collaborators to write or produce or sing on the songs that I write and produce, and they press play and play 90 seconds of a song, and then they say their Instagram again, and everyone that's interested is typing their Instagram, and it's this whole scene in Los Angeles of events like this, and the people that go are creating this in the box production of modern sounding electronic based pop, R&B, and rock. And I've been, and there's some really good people. Phoebe Bridgers got discovered at one of those. And this was, you know, she went, and she's an acoustic guitar artist. And I'll go and I'll throw my name in the hat. And they drew my name last month. And I went up and played a song by an artist that I'm developing. And people loved it. And it's a crazy ass song with a crazy story. And people heard the lyrics and were just like, oh my God. And I got like 50 new Instagram followers from that. And all of them want me to work for them for free, of course. But it's, you know, it's just that's where things are headed. But if you're doing rock, if you're doing soul, if you're doing country, stay true to what you're doing and market your product to the people that like those styles of music. And don't worry about all the other stuff. Just try to find your niche and hammer it home. And a lot of people in the world are going to listen to the same 20 records over and over and over again for the rest of their life. Find the ones who don't. Find the ones who are looking to find something new. They don't care if it's on Sony Records. They don't care if so-and-so produced it. They don't care who the mixer is on that. They don't look at things like that. They look at, I want a song that touches me here and stimulates me here. And that's what you need to do as an artist, is you need to write for those people. And then you need to find them. And it's not that easy, or everyone would do it, but it is possible. It is possible.
Promotion, doing what you enjoy. Any final advice for indie over 50 artists?
Keep writing. That's the whole thing. ABW. Always be writing. That's the new thing that I say to people, and publishers say to people, and labels say to the kids that come in. Always write. Never stop writing. You never know when you're going to write your perfect song. It might come one day in the lunchroom at work. It might come into your head when you're on the freeway driving home from work. It might pop up when you're playing golf. You never know. You always have to think like a songwriter if you're going to be a professional songwriter. And I work with a lot of these kids who are the ones that write those songs for the Tate McRae's. And I know a lot of them, and that's all they do, is talk about songwriting, who produced it, who mixed it, who engineered it. I like this effect. How did he do that? Well, you know, and music theory is very important too. Music theory is becoming more important. You know, I can't talk music theory. I never have been able to. I'm not a trained musician. But now, because of the level of competition, you got to be really, really good. And although somebody might hate this particular band, doesn't mean they're not good. And just about everything I hear on the radio is way better than things I used to hear on the radio.
I think that's great advice about keep writing. And I think it ties in with something that I said in your introduction about the fact that you keep listening, and you're listening out for the next big song. For our indie over 50 artists who are writing the next big song, I have an expression at the end of my normal videos of your song's not written yet. So keep indie over 50. So with that, it's wonderful advice, I think, for indie over 50 artists. And for those who are curious about listening to new music, I will invite them, and I'll have your link below for one of your playlists where you're inviting people to listen to fresh stuff. And it's really, really helpful to understand. Certainly one of the pieces of enduring advice you gave me was, you know, what is indie today? What is indie rock today? Listen to these songs to understand what that world of indie rock is about, because it's not the indie rock from 1989 or whatever other period of
or even 2019. So it's not the indie rocks of 2019. Everything is just so changing so fast in the world we live in, including music. So, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And if people want to reach out through the website, that would be great. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear some of the stuff that you're working on. And I'm one of you. I am also over 50. So I will definitely not have a problem listening to some stuff. And hopefully this has been some helpful advice and encouragement and a heavy dose of reality, which is kind of the way I usually roll. But yeah, it's, it can happen. Look at the people that the last 4 years, go back and look at Best New Artist nominees for the Grammys. Brittany Howard from Alabama Shakes was a postal carrier for 20 years. A lot of these people that were nominated are in their 40s and 50s. So it's never too late.
I love that message, and it's a very generous offer from you, Chris. We will have your contact details because you can be available to help indie over 50 and other artists with developing their career professionally. I've also appreciate the opportunity you've provided for people to discover new music through your lists.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to speak with you. Thanks.